Hi there, Martin here. Quick review of the CFX Spin Glide fixtures. I bought two of them, they arrived yesterday. I've popped them onto a gravity lighting stand with a short mini T-bar top. Stuck them in sound mode for now, and as you can see, popped a little bit of haze in the room because I've actually got a couple of gigs coming up where I know that I'll definitely better use my haze machine. I just wanted to see what they look like. First impressions, sound mode is wild. Occasionally they calm themselves down, but the moment that anything happens in the room, they seem to go off on a mission. And yeah, I'd be feeling quite ill at some point, I think, if I was to be watching this all night, especially from behind my DJ booth. So what I'm going to do is connect them up to my Wolfmix W1 controller and see if we can't tame these things just a little bit. Right then, here I am back again. I've got my Wolfmix W1 controller connected to the Spin Glides directly using a DMX cable. A couple of things first about these things. The user manual that came with it, a little bit questionable in terms of the way it describes some of the DMX channels and the traits. So it took a little bit of experimentation to get the profile to work properly. Not too bad, only took me a short while. That's now resolved, so I've got a working profile for this fixture. Also worth noting, if you don't know, that these fixtures have a single colour / gobo wheel. So each individual gobo is a specific colour. Now you could treat this within the fixture, within the W1, as a gobo wheel. I've chosen to treat it as a colour wheel because that makes some of the effects on the W1 a little bit more interesting and a bit more usable. So for example, if I'm using it in a static mode at the moment on a single colour, so I can select the various colours. You can't see this, but the actual gobo being projected is a different image, but it works pretty well. So there's I think there's 8 or 9 colours. We've got green, blue, there's a nice magenta colour, red, and we've also got a yellow. There's a nice green with a nice pattern being projected, a blue, and then white, which is open. And what we're seeing here is a whole bunch of kind of circles, dots around the room. So in terms of being useful as a colour wheel, that's far more usable than just having a gobo wheel, I feel. So that's how I've set this up. Your mileage may vary, that's up to you, but that's what I found so far. As you can see, you've got a fair bit more control over this device with a DMX controller than you have when using it as a in sound active mode. So I've also set up a facility within the live edits on the W1 to be able to control the gobo rotation. So actually I should call it the mirror rotation. The gobos don't rotate, the mirror inside the Spin Glide rotates to give a kind of a rotating gobo effect. So if I turn this, you should see that the actual mirrors are not either rolling or panning, but the actual gobo itself appears to be rotating. As I said, it's actually the mirror inside the Spin Glide itself that's doing that. But it's quite a neat effect. Looks like a gobo rotation. So you've got some movement in terms of the light being projected, but it's not actually being flung around the room. Nice effect there, I like it. So moving on to colour effects. So you can obviously, with the W1, if you set it up as a colour wheel, use colour effects, which is pretty cool. So I've got a few simple colour effects that I've set up here. So this is just a fairly straightforward switch between red, green and blue on a timer. So as you can see, this works quite well. The actual gobo, as I said, being projected onto the walls changes as well with the colour. I don't really have too much of a problem with that. I think it's pretty cool. I've not put too much haze in this room. And as I mentioned earlier, the gigs that I've got coming up, I will definitely be able to use haze. I'm actually going to talk very briefly about the fixtures themselves. I've got them mounted on this gravity stand with Gravity's mini T-bar. And the way that they fix onto that means that the actual fixtures can be almost right up to the ceiling, which is perfect for me because I know that I'm going to be in a fairly low ceiling room. It's not going to be far above my head. So the fact that the way these mount on here means that they can go right to the ceiling in a low ceiling room is actually pretty cool, pretty handy. They're also pretty light as well, so they're much smaller. I also have a pair of ADJ Warlocks. These weigh nothing in comparison with those. So overall, I'm pretty cool with this. I will also show you that, I mean, I've got the two of them mounted up here pointing pretty much straight ahead. But in reality, in fact, let's do that now. Let's move them so that they're very slightly apart so that we can get a slightly more interesting image being projected. So, right, reach the mounting on here, if I can actually get to it, right up high. It'd be really useful if I could actually see in the dark. Right, so I'll probably just fan these kind of manually, as it were, so that they're not projecting in exactly the same direction. Right, move effects. Let's have a look at those. A couple of other things to note about these fixtures. If you don't employ some of the W1's facilities like limitations, they will spin wildly out of control. Okay, we have the same issues with things like Warlocks, Wizards, Helix, all of those kind of fixtures that have either a rotating mirror or a spinning barrel. They will spin pretty wildly out of control. So you need to use limitations to restrict the movement to slow them down. If you do that, you can achieve some pretty cool effects. So if I switch on movement effects for this, I'm going to go for, first of all, just here the barrel is rolling but is not panning kind of left and right, and they literally just kind of roll backwards and forwards. If I adjust the speed right down, you get a much nicer and more controllable image projected, he says. So speed gives you a kind of greater level of control over these things. If I use a pan only, so now the barrels are not rolling, they're just panning, so it kind of gives a more, if these were moving heads, they would just be panning left and right. They're not moving up and down. But the pan on these is slightly odd. Once you kind of got your head around how it works and what it does, it's quite useful. Again, you should be able to slow this right down so that you have very minimal movement in the room. I'm a big fan of these kind of lights, but I don't like them spinning wildly out of control. So that's pan. This is the equivalent of a kind of a circular pattern. So the barrel pans kind of left and right and is also rotating at the same time, and so you get a slightly faster movement in the room. But again, I feel like it's definitely far more under control and therefore far more usable. This is more of a figure of 8 pattern. So the barrels here will spin quite quickly for some parts of the movement, and then slow down. As always, you've got a speed control on the W1, and you can just find the speed that actually suits the room that you're in and the kind of crowd and the vibe that you're looking for. A couple of others. So there is the conductor, which is a bit more of a kind of a rapid movement. Again, I'm going to just slow it down a little bit so that you can see that there is a nice variation in kind of either slower or faster movements, all in the same pattern. But yeah, I'm finding that I'm able to get quite nice variations in the movement patterns without them going particularly wild, which is pretty cool. None of this is using actually any kind of gobo rotation or the mirror rotation either. So I can go and add that as well, and that gives a kind of an extra dimension to it. So if I dial in a little bit of mirror rotation, you probably won't see much in terms of the light beams, but you will see that in the room. So yes, I'm going to just slow this down very slightly so that we can see a little bit more. The haze I've turned off probably some 5 minutes ago now, so it's beginning to disperse in this room. Might have to go and switch that on again and put a little bit more in a second. But hopefully you'll get a view on this. So that covers the kind of the main effects. I've only got 2, so it's unlikely that I'm going to use beam effects on this, because I'm not sure why I'd want one on and not the other. You may notice that there are times when these fixtures appear to mirror each other. That's because I have set them up to do that in the W1. I've deliberately inverted the tilt channel in the limitations for one of the fixtures, so that it gives the impression that one is going to mirror the other. There isn't, I don't believe there's a mechanism to do that on the fixtures themselves, but you can absolutely do it within the W1, and I feel like it gives a slightly nicer image in the room. So rather than the two of them doing exactly the same thing, I've used the invert tilt, or in some cases phase, on here to create a kind of a mirrored effect. Overall, though, it looks pretty good. So, so do I think these things are, a pair of them is worth investing in for what would probably be well under £300 for two? Absolutely. I think they're bright enough. I've seen commentary saying that 80-watt fixtures are just not bright enough. I'm expecting to go into a couple of venues soon, which have a dance floor capacity of about 50 people tops, and that would be cramming them in. So I don't have a lot of room for me. I don't have a lot of room for my equipment. But what I would like to take in is something that's going to create quite a nice vibe in the room. So I'm absolutely planning on taking these two plus some uplights. That's going to create all of the effects I need in a very tiny space. The gravity stand itself takes up no space. I've got the smaller base plate here, which is again perfect because that means that can go almost right into the corner of the room. I'm going to have room for my DJ booth or pod in front, and still allow plenty of room for a dance floor in what I know is going to be quite a small place. It's a lovely little bar. The first one is a lovely bar, but it's got a low ceiling and it's not got a particularly large dance floor or DJ space. So this is going to work. This is going to work perfectly for me. In terms of things that I'm not overly impressed with, sound active mode, I wouldn't use that anyway, but I suspect I would struggle to make some use of that. I think it appears to be very fast. I can't see a method within the user manual to slow those down. You can reduce sound sensitivity, but the overall speed I'm really struggling with. The only other item worthy of note for this is these both use PowerCon in, which is great. They don't have a PowerCon out, so you can't link one to the other for power. So hence, at the moment, for the purposes of this video, I've had to run two power cables up the pole and into each fixture. So that's the only downsides for me that I've noticed at the moment. The user manual, as I said, slightly questionable in places. There's a lovely picture of a gobo wheel with colours and patterns on it that bear absolutely no resemblance to what's actually in here. So yeah, don't believe what you read in the user manual there. I think they may have even stolen the picture for the user manual from something like the Eurolite Cat 80, which, to all intents and purposes, this is a replica of that. It's a replica of the ADJ unit and I believe the Prolight version, which is coming out soon. They're all, I suspect, based on the same internals and the same concept. They just have different gobo / colour wheels. Anyway, that's it from me. I would say yes. I think for the money, absolutely worth it. They're going to do a great job for me in the gigs I've got coming up in the tight spaces that I know I'm going to be in, and I'm going to spend a bit more time trying to get even more control over these things using my W1. Absolutely recommend this with those because, as I said, sound active mode feels a bit wild from the offset. Anyway, if you've got any questions, either pop them in the comments below, or I'm sure you can find me on socials and ask questions there too. But that's it. Thanks a lot.